Hello my fellow readers, in this video I'm going to talk about Everything is Fine, and as you may notice, I don't have a book to hold up because this is published as a webtoon and does not yet have a print version. I don't know whether or not it ever will. I don't know. Everything is Fine just wrapped up its first season, well, last year. And it is a horror webtoon, and I mean, it's horror, but it's dystopian horror. So there you go. It's such a weird world. When Everything is Fine opens up, we're introduced to the main characters, a couple named Sam and Maggie. And we notice things are a little strange. One, Sam and Maggie have cat heads, like giant cat heads that cover their heads at all times. But they appear to have regular humanoid bodies below the giant cat heads. And it also is just very quickly revealed that things are unsettling and something is not right. Like, they appear to be like a normal couple in a normal house, in a normal neighborhood, but nothing seems right or normal. Like, you know right away that there's this eerie feeling of something is wrong here. And the first major scene that really kicks it off is Sam and Maggie sit down for dinner. And I think actually this might be before dinner. They're talking about their dog, and it cuts to an image of the dog, and the dog is very clearly dead. Like, there's flies flying around the dog. Like, it's clearly dead. And so you wonder why they're not addressing the fact that the dog is dead. Like, they're talking about the dog, like, not having the same spirit and coming to greet him. Like, I think at one point the wife, Maggie, was maybe calling for the dog, and the dog's just laying there dead. And you're like, lady, that dog's dead. Still hasn't been addressed why. Like, they don't talk about that or bring that up, but not going to get into it. That was the first time that you're like, something is wrong. Like, very, very clearly wrong with this setting. The next comes at dinner. Like, they sit down to a pasta dinner, and I don't remember if Maggie was there or if she went off to the other room, but there is another character who comes to the window and is essentially being like, hey, can you give me any food? And, you know, when we see the character, they still have a cat head on, but it's like tearing in places and it looks really beat up, and you're like, what's going on with this guy? And he's asking for food, but also proceeds to say, because, like, what's thrown out in the trash has been poisoned. I can't eat it. It's made me really sick before. Can you throw something away that's not poisoned and I can eat it? And Sam just appears to be sitting there ignoring this person that's outside. Like, it just flat cat face. They're not really full of expression to begin with because they're cat heads, but really just seems to be like zoned out. But then he's like, hey, you know, Maggie, I think whatever the dog's name is, I can't remember at this point, needs to go out. I'm gonna let him out. So he picks up the dog and brings him outside. He then comes inside. The dog's outside. He's inside. And it's followed by a happy voice from outside saying, wow, is this for me? This is all for me. And then followed by the sound of eating and chomping. Yeah, very disturbing. The guy outside was eating the dead dog. Yeah, so there's a big part of the setup. Like, there is something seriously wrong. Like, everything is not fine. And that's part one of setting the scene. We do see a little bit later, like, Maggie is having doubts about this society that they're being forced to live in. And, you know, we see revealed through different parts that somebody is monitoring them at all times, and in part through these cat heads, but also they can't trust neighbors or anything. Like, that kind of reminds me of, like, say, like Nazi Germany, where you you didn't necessarily know when you'd be turned in, and it could benefit people to do so. Not that I lived through that, but just through others' accounts of it. So it's kind of that vibe of, who can you trust and what's happening. And you see that Maggie's having doubts about everything, and Sam is trying to just keep her from saying anything because he doesn't want her captured, or whatever that entails. There seems to be some light references to them doing what they're doing in order to protect kids, their kids. So you don't know why that is the case. Like, why don't they have their kids, and who has them? But also just, you obviously know there's some kind of entity that's monitoring them. The two of them are invited to dinner at their next door neighbor's house, as well as their other neighbor from across the street, Charlie. And recently, Charlie's been looked at kind of strangely. He seems to be buying like some weird stuff and just spending hours in his house. And so he's kind of a weirdo in the neighborhood. You don't really know, but he gets invited to dinner so they can kind of assess what's happening with him. While at dinner, I think they start to question Maggie and how in line with all the rules she is, because she decides to wear this sleek, kind of sexy dress that, normally wouldn't be for a dinner like this, and is a little bit more showy than they would normally wear. So there are kind of like warning signs that maybe Maggie's being a little different, but their neighbor, Charlie, perhaps reads this a different way. That sounds wrong, not in like a my neighbor wants to get with me way. Just like, oh, she may be up for discussing other things about this system that we're in, but he's kind of covert about like how he talks. So he will say that he spends a lot of time in his basement working on his trains, and he invites Maggie to go over to his house in order to see the trains. And we know from earlier clips, like, we want to see what's in the basement, because like Charlie goes down to the basement and we're like, what's in the basement? So when Maggie gets invited, we're like, ooh, we get to see the basement. But that following day, things don't quite go as planned, and it kicks off a whole slew of other events that I'm not going to get into because I'm not going to spoil it. But yeah, it's dark and twisty, and events that happen in it. So again, this is a dystopian horror. There are some gruesome scenes and events that occur. I mean, I just talked to you about a dead dog that gets eaten. I mean, that's pretty bad enough. You don't see it. Just FYI, you don't see it get eaten. It's off screen. You hear eating sounds, but you don't see it. So if you're worried about that, you don't see it. The artwork for it is very simplified, but it works to the effect of being or adding to the disturbing factor of it. I would definitely recommend it to like horror fans who, just want to be unsettled by a good story. It is available for free on Webtoon, so you can pop over there and give it a read and see how you feel about it. Season 2 should be coming sometime this year. I don't remember when, but I'm looking forward to that. Again, I would be willing to also buy like a print version, so maybe Webtoon will be up for that. Not much else to say. Check out Everything is Fine if you want to. Oh, it's by Mike Burchell. Hopefully I said his name right. But so look it up on Webtoon if you want to check it out. There used to be, which is kind of maybe how I got brainwashed into watching it or reading it, I don't know, but there used to be on YouTube a bunch of commercials for it, like reactions from people reviewing it and whatever. They were everywhere. And I was like, okay, this wants me to read it. Maybe I'll give it a try. I was intrigued enough by some of the clips of it that I was like, okay, I want to read it. And then, yeah, it swept me up, and I was just like reading chapter upon chapter until I got done with the season. So I would recommend it. Super good. I like the creepy disturbing factor of it. If you like creepy, disturbing stories, give Everything is Fine a read. That's it for this video. Until next time, bye.